This is a short video about how to install a roof vent into a cargo trailer. In this case, we've got the Fan-tastic vent, model 1200. Very similar to many others that are on the market. Most of them are a standard size, 14 inches by 14 inches. This trailer here has a framed out opening to accept this vent. When I was looking for this trailer, I made sure that I got a trailer that had this framework. Some trailers don't have that, and you probably need to add that framework. So that is sized for the vent. First thing I did was I came up through the middle with a drill and elongated the hole here so that I can get a Sawzall blade. I want to try to work from the underside because working on top of this roof is not a great idea. There's not a lot of support up there. The aluminum sheeting is super thin, so it's suspect to damage, even if you throw a sheet of plywood or something up there. So to do my cutting, I'm going to try to cut this from the bottom only and not get up on top until I need to put the screws on there. My plan is to use a Sawzall, a really fine bit, fine blade, and start off here from the middle, kind of work my way towards the outside so that I can make sure I'm not tearing that aluminum on the outside, and pretty much go right along the inside of this opening. That's going to give me the size that I need. There's a pretty good size flange, so the edge condition is not critical, but I do want to make sure that I'm not tearing that aluminum or bending it in any way because it is so fragile. So now that I've got this slot in here and I can get my blade started, I'm going to kind of work my way around, do some cutting and see how that works out. Practice kind of in the middle before I get near the edge. That way, if this method is not a good way of cutting, I haven't destroyed the roof material out near the edges where it's important. Also, this way I really don't need to do any marking. I'm pretty much going to cut right along the edge of this square tubing. All right, here we go. The problem here is definitely that my blade is a little too fat to make the turns. It is cutting well. I did go up top and look, it's making a nice clean cut, but trying to make turns with this blade being so wide is problematic. So I'm going to see if I have a narrower blade, or I'm going to make some more slots with a drill to get the blade started in the right direction. Okay, fast forward. Ended up making slotted holes in the four corners and then just cutting across all four sides. Not a bad cut quality. The roof did not tear. Basically just go right along the framing, come across. These guys didn't help me out by having 2 layers of ply here, 1 here. And that's not going to be the greatest detail when I go to seal this. But there's no way I can separate these out of here in the roof structure. Well, it should be fine. So anyway, that worked out fine. The roof material was thick enough where it really didn't tear. Not real pretty, but the finished product is good. And so now I'm going to drop the fan in there and see if it fits. Okay, so even without a perfect cut, because the fan is a bit smaller than the steel framed opening, the fan dropped right in there. Got a little bit of slop to go side to side. The other thing that you need to worry about is that the screws that are in this plastic flange come really close to the edge of this tubing here. They will not fall on the center, at least on this trailer. So it is actually going to be important that I get this fan centered. If I don't center it, some of those screws could end up outside of this square tubing, which is not ideal. Hopefully I can get into the actual tube all the way around. So, but it does look like I've got some play. Everything looks good. We'll go up on the roof and see what it looks like. Pretty good up here. It fits fine. I mean, these roofs are fairly flexible and kind of spongy anyway. So I'll just be putting a bunch of screws in there and pulling that thing down and use a bunch of sealant. But that's what it looks like from up here. It looks good. Okay, so now I need to figure out how I'm going to fasten this vent to the trailer. These are the screws that came with the kit, these flatheads. These are really wood screws. They probably have a soft head, they have very small threads, and they're short, so that's not going to work. And so this is what I'm going to use, self-drilling, self-tapping with a flanged head on there. We can go in the trailer and take a look. Again, for some reason I have 2 layers of plywood here. So as you can see with the factory screws, those are just really too short. So I'm going to go with a self-drilling, self-tapper, which will get me down in there. These are actually made to grab into the steel tubing and pull that down tight. So that's what I'm going to use for the fasteners. Now, I'm afraid about drilling on this, drilling these holes, because as I come through here you can see the chuck of the drill is very close to this plastic and I don't want to hit that. So I'm going to be using a nut driver coming down here where I can stay away from this plastic surface. The other thing is that this has got to be sealed underneath. I'm going to run a bead of sealant around here. This is the stuff that I choose to use, which is good but super messy, and once you start to touch this stuff it just gets everywhere. So what I find is that I try to do as much work ahead of time without that stuff, because once that gets put in place, that's going to end up in the holes on your drill bit and your tools and your hands and everything. So what I'm going to try to do is go up and do the 4 corners and actually put those screws in dry. And once those have been in, I'll take those out. I'll then put the sealant on the underside of the vent and put the vent in place, and then screw it back down with the 4 screws in the corners using these long guys. And then I'll come back and I'll put the rest of the screws right through the sealant, and hopefully these are going to go into the steel tubing. So that'll be sealed underneath. Once the screw heads are in place and this is on the trailer permanently, then I'll also come back on top with some of this sealant, go over the screw heads and on the seam. So I'll take the vent up there now and spot those 4 corners. Okay, so I have the 4 corner screws in, drilled them through. It's dry, I do not have the sealant in there. I'm going to go ahead now and mark each of the other holes with a Sharpie, And then I will remove the vent, and I will drill all the other holes, pre-drill the holes without the vent in place. And then I will go ahead and put the sealant on the vent and slap it in place. And that should do it. It looks like it fits really well. It pulls down really nice. No gaps or anything, and with the other screws, should be good. Okay, all the holes are drilled up top. Brought the vent down, put a bead of sealant on there, and now I'm going to go drop it in place and put the screws in. All right, that's it. Went on nicely, all the screws lined up. A nice little bead of sealant came out all the way around, so I think I'm just going to leave it like that. Sealed up good, didn't tighten them too tight. Just snug them down. It's a pretty nice thick flange on this unit. And so far, I got to say I'm happy with it, and it went well. And hope you guys have similar luck doing your installation.